What's up, everybody? It's Xaiyeon here, and today on this Walk and Talk and Rock episode, we'll be talking about, that's right, the Marvel vs. Capcom series and its history and legacy. Although it is not really Marvel vs. Capcom anymore, Capcom is pivoting towards a single title. I guess they're having a lot of problems with IP and licensing issues. To Marvel Tokon, right? Which is coming out next month apparently. But look forward to like a free weekend in the next coming weeks. So you can all give it a try and see if it's a great fighting game that you will enjoy and love. Obviously, I like Marvel vs. Capcom. So I was really devastated to see that there's not going to be that many characters from, Marvel, I believe, I guess. We'll see if they're gonna have DLC later or not. So in today's video, we'll be going over in the first section how Marvel and Capcom created the crossover fighter. And then the next section will be about the full Marvel vs. Capcom timeline. How it came to be from the series, a little bit about how it evolved, and what the game is, and a little bit about the fighting game community. Then we'll talk about, how it became into esport, Marvel in the fighting game community, and going into Evo. And then I'll talk about how Marvel vs. Capcom, in my opinion, is the best fighting game series. King of Fighters and KOF vs. SNK is up there too. I feel like this one is definitely higher because of the IP and the more familiarity with the characters, okay? And then lastly, is more Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls and the future of the series itself. And maybe a little bit about my opinions, about what I think about the game and how it is so far. All right. So let's just get started. So let me talk about like a bit about what is Marvel Tokon. It is basically, I guess, like 2KXO, which is the League of Legends fighting game. But this time you can do a 4v4 and it's tag team. So originally, the first, or Marvel vs. Capcom 3, it was a 3 versus 3 tag team, right? And now it's up 4, which is just crazy because this roster has less characters than previous titles, and I'm like, okay. So we're gonna see a lot of different meta changes. Hopefully, it's not gonna get too crazy with the same characters you see, especially like in the Dragon Ball Z games. You literally see in the top 8 almost a similar setup for each team that players use. You always see like, I think, tanks, Go tanks, and like Vegeta or something, as Vegeta or something. And it's like super stale and boring. After a while, like the first year of the fighting game is usually exciting, and then once the meta solidifies, it only changes when there's patches and balances and whatnot. All right. So the series itself, though, the game for Marvel vs. Capcom, it was never perfectly balanced. Obviously, I think they did sometimes had bans for characters because, some of them are just way too good, and they wanted some variety, in my opinion. And in my opinion, the game had a really nice vibe. It was cartoonish, but it still retained like the integrity of a fighting game, almost similar to like Street Fighter series. And it's very easy to like learn the combos and whatnot, so it wasn't really that bad, in my opinion. I think it's not the solo one. 8. One. Oh, they literally dropped the same thing. Alright. So let's go for the first section. So we're going to talk about how Marvel vs. Capcom game series, Capcom's Marvel Fighting game series began with actually X-Men and the Children of the Atom, and later Marvel superheroes. And actually the first crossover they had was X-Men versus Street Fighter, and then Marvel superheroes versus Street Fighter. So they always do Street Fighter as a segue to other spin-off series, which is obviously a smart marketing thing. Definitely made money there. And it was fun too because you were able to use like your favorite characters from other series. And I'm just like so sad it's kind of come to an end right now. I don't know what it is, maybe money. I don't know. It just kind of sucks because Marvel has so many good characters, like a shit ton of characters. Like you'll never run the characters from Marvel. You know, they have over 8,000 or something. And it's just such a loss, in my opinion, in terms of IP. And then it's hard to make similar characters because they just have so many designs. And no one wants to get fined, you know, for being creative, which makes sense. So then, after that, they started doing that crossover, right? Marvel vs. Capcom. They had the tag team feature was introduced, and it was basically just a copy and paste, honestly, of Street Fighter mechanics. So each character that you tag team in had their own special abilities and whatnot. So really, the only selling point, honestly, for Marvel vs. Capcom is the tag team feature and the amount of different characters that you had in the game. But unlike Street Fighter 6 and other games, there was infinite combos and really interesting setups in Marvel vs. Capcom. And you can do so many things from OTG, and then you can really do aerial combos with ease. And then you can chain characters combos into specific setups that lead up to infinite combos. And some of those got patched and some of those didn't. Like there's I think a Morgan, Chun-Li, and other infinite, like Dante, I think has an infinite. There was some really crazy infinites. And during that time, a lot of pro players would knew how to counter all that and whatnot. And sometimes you saw it all the time in tournaments, and it kind of got repetitive. You know, especially when like some players like Ray J and older players like Chris G, you know, they were really good. But a lot of people didn't really enjoy watching their gameplay. They would do the same thing basically, but it works. And I think that's where the series kind of died off because there was no innovation from anybody really using the other characters because, like I said, the game suffered from a lot of imbalance. Like, deadass, there are some characters that are completely useless and literally have no purpose. Well, I forgot which characters, but there's like just a lot of characters. I think maybe, I mean, Beautiful Joe is okay, Rocket Raccoon is okay, and definitely you can see some different setups with a different amount of characters. But for the most part, it was basically the same thing. So with that tag team leap of force, it really exploded with that series that I mentioned from the X-Men versus Street Fighter. And that was in 1996. I was barely born, so that's pretty crazy. And then they had dramatic battle effects idea from their other Street Fighter games, like Street Fighter Alpha and all that stuff. So the genius of Marvel vs. Capcom is that it did not ask who would win in a realistic fight. It basically was a game of what would happen if the comic books arcade machines had pure nonsense in it. And that's why it was more fast-paced than other fighting games. Like honestly, if you blinked once and you weren't prepared in that game, you're basically dead. But that's like all fighting games. But it was especially true for Marvel vs. Capcom games, and that similar transition to the series itself. So series worked because, like I said, they had so many different character IP. And honestly, if you liked one character, obviously most people are more inclined to play the game. And having played the game, and this novelty idea has been going on for almost 20 years now, I'm guessing it kind of weared out, which makes sense. You know, franchise fatigue is real. People seeing or trying a franchise actually for more than a decade, people just generally tend to get bored, which is totally acceptable. But during this hype era of tag team battle tactics and characters from different IP was widely popular from the early 2000s to, I would say, definitely the late or mid 2010s. So Capcom characters had different cultures from other games, and every character had like their own animations, even their own moves from the movies and whatnot incorporated. Like even Spider-Man was freaking cool and all that. And they had like Jill, Dante, so many freaking characters, like Mega Man, Zero, and all that. So freaking cool. I liked it. So yeah, it was basically that one fantasy fighting game. Like, and I want to mention this other indie fighting game called Mugen, which you can literally just add any kind of character. And I think the evolution of Mugen was kind of inspired by the raw beginnings of the Capcom fighting games, honestly, because of that. But it was more like crazy and wacky. So like if you ever wanted to play some fighting game with a lot of customization, definitely check out Mugen. I'm pretty sure the project is still going on. And you can definitely find a lot of character data, character sets, move sets to modify the game as you like. So now that we kind of understand the roots, we're going to go into the next section about the timeline and how every major entity helped shape Marvel vs. Capcom series into what it is today. Hold on. So, Marvel vs. Capcom is not one game. It is basically a series, obviously. So we're gonna talk about the beginnings of like the X-Men roster, how they decided to implement different types of fighting mechanics. Compared to Street Fighter, which is more grounded and stationary and a bit more realistic when it comes to physics. Marvel vs. Capcom was crazy, wacky, and had a whole bunch of surprises. And that was, honestly, that's really hard to balance since every character had different heights, every character had different hitboxes, which was very important in Marvel vs. Capcom because there's definitely some characters that have a advantage when doing some moves, like if you're playing Rocket Raccoon, or characters such as that robot Sentinel, the robot. It's freaking huge, big ass hitbox. So it was very hard to balance, and the game was always patched and fine-tuned over the course, from the first series. So we're going to go from like X-Men, Children of Atom, to Marvel superheroes, which is basically the holy grail after that point. Then X-Men versus Street Fighter, and then Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, then Marvel versus Capcom Clash of Superheroes. Then actually the defining stage where I feel like it hit mainstream, which is Marvel vs. Capcom 2, The New Age of Heroes. And then obviously into Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which was honestly, I think 2 and 3 were the prime points of the series. So I'm just gonna go to the Marvel Superheroes or Street Fighter because I think that's the era where most people actually enjoyed that series. It had more characters, definitely much more than the original concept, from X-Men. And since they already had the tagging system implemented and it was more mature, I felt that people gave that game more of a chance because the X-Men one was really like a proof of concepts. People would actually like this kind of style of fighting game set. Capcom was really testing the waters here, and it was a sort of slight success. Okay, it wasn't too successful, but it was I would say break even. And that's where the versus identity becomes real, like how you can change your team up and whatever. So then in Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, they started introducing the assist style, which is where people would hear like, oh, you assist OTG from other characters, and it helps continue your string of combos, which was basically the defining point of the series, because every setup you do with different characters can combo into these crazy combos. Honestly, like if you watched Evo highlights for Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and 3, you'll see amazing ass fighting game combos. It's so satisfying to watch these players execute at a high level. And yeah, it was really heart pumping, heart racing action right there. So it was already at this point materialized for the series that this was the direction that Capcom decided to go, which is great. So now comes the first of the series, Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of the Superheroes. And now it wasn't just Street Fighter anymore, because they had Ryu and Ken and all that, and Chun-Li, right, and all that. Now they started adding more big name characters. They added more from their Capcom series, and now they started adding other IP. And that just opened up more fun and crazy chaos. And honestly, I wasn't really taking that seriously during this time, especially with the rise of Evo and fighting game tournaments. It started to become a little bit popular, but not that popular, right? Because it was still a lot of imbalance. And I think this is where Marvel vs. Capcom really started to iron out a lot of bugs, exploits. I mean, the exploits were usually just infinite combos with glitches where you would refresh like a setup from an OTG or a super, which is fine because back then not a lot of people would sit down and lab in a video game. But as the tournament started to appear and real money was online, people started finding all these crazy combos, and some of them actually get patched out because you would see them be used in tournaments, and that was really sad. So I felt like that part kind of killed the hype for the game, because if people saw that people were just doing the same thing and exploiting combos, obviously no one wants to play the game if they have to do that same thing. So definitely a lot of balance issues there for Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, and then same with Marvel versus Capcom, the first one. So then that brings us to, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And this is where the series takes off. This is the golden era of Marvel vs. Capcom right here. You see it being played in huge tournaments now. Evo. I don't know. I really don't know that any of the other ones. Maybe Big Battle or something. But it was definitely super popular in Japan. I believe there was a decent Japan scene for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And it was definitely popular here in the... What do I say? America? Yeah, I guess so. And you had different people from different continents flying out, competing in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 tournaments. Because not only was this roster pretty big, it had 56 characters. But now instead of 2v2, it was expanded into 3v3, which opens more variety. And it's crazy because now Token is 4v4, and then what's the next one going to be? 5v5? I feel like 3v3 is the perfect spot, honestly. And I feel like 3v3 it is good enough. I mean, 4v4 sounds excessive, to be honest. So now you can have 3 characters, and most people, they would usually counter against your anchor character, which is usually your last character in your team when you're doing these tag team stuff. And that was basically how the meta was, kind of, in my opinion. So you would usually see, like Dragon Ball Z, usually either the same 1 or 2 character setup, and then the anchor character is usually changed upon being a counter. Like I said, counters usually were counter picks because of a character's versatility versus another character, whether it be height or the ranged at which your attacks are. Like some characters were more close range, some characters are mid range, and some characters were long range. So you would basically counter on that, and that kind of play style that factors into it. I mean, they had Strider, who was really squishy, so he was really good against characters like Sentinel, but suffered against smaller targets like Rocket Raccoon or Zero and things like that. And so honestly, the most popular characters are Marvel vs. Capcom 2 were definitely Magneto, Storm, Sentinel, Cable, Psylocke, Captain Commando, Iron Man, Strider, and Doom. And it was literally, like I said, this is literally the golden era. So everybody had high hopes and expectations when Capcom was announcing development for Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So I'm guessing this is like the golden age, because Capcom wasn't really afraid, or they were able to get more character IP into the game, because of course everybody and their mom, when it comes to business, when they see a pie that's getting bigger, oh no shit, everybody wants to eat that pie. This is how these people are, or human nature is. Where there's a big ass pie, you gotta get that slice. So after the amazing rising popularity spike from Marvel vs. Capcom 2, once Marvel vs. Capcom 3 released, holy shit, it was crazy. And it's crazy too, because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 reused assets from other games from the series, like Street Fighter and all that, to build out this 56 character roster. Because holy shit, when Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out, that roster was huge. And it was a really long gap. I think almost a decade or so. Something like that for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. From Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Let me see, sorry. Just want to make sure it's correct. Yeah, it was about 10 years. So I was right. And that's fine, because fighting games always have a longer lifespan because of tournaments and all that. So now we enter Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Literally the pinnacle and literally the downfall as well. Because I guess Capcom they just got lazy. You know, they had the bag already. They made their money. And I guess that was pretty much it. So now, in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, we have that 3v3. And the gameplay has definitely evolved from 2D to this 3D looking models, but in a 2D style. Kind of like how it evolved with BlazBlue and Guilty Gear. So it was good. I was like, holy, everybody was mind blown, right? That it was even possible to use 3D in like a 2D fighting game sense. So it was so revolutionary back then, all right? It was insane. And a lot of things were introduced, such as like the X Factor, which is basically when you use X Factor and your character gains temporary boost to damage, and I believe health. And when you do your like supers for the part, I think it does like 2 times damage and stuff like that. So it was really a game changer, all right? And certain characters had really good X Factor, like most notably Dante or Virgil, paired with their Demon Time specials. It was definitely always a game changer. And every character was now suddenly pretty much viable, right? Pretty much viable in the sense that if you were able to land an OTG or an assist or get a confirm on any of your attacks, you would then X Factor and then chain that into your combos. But most of the time, X Factor would be used, like I said, at the turning point of a fight. You know, maybe when you're down to either your anchor character, or if you really wanted to steamroll right from the get-go. I mean, mostly everybody used it when they were had their back against the wall in their match or set. So yeah, this was really the modern era of Marvel vs. Capcom. And it was like that because, you know, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was like the original edition. And then they had characters introduced and then it transformed into Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. You know, this was also during the time when Street Fighter 3 and then Street Fighter 4 had those notorious titles, you know, like Street Fighter 4 Super Edition, Street Fighter 4 Ultimate Edition, Street Fighter 4 Super Ultimate Hyper whatever bullshit edition. Like Capcom was going nuts during this time, y'all, because the fighting game community literally like quadrupled, man, and Evo became extremely popular. I wouldn't blame them. It's really fun, and you know, people should get into the series. You know, maybe you need a little bit of fighting game in your life. Maybe you need to get beat up in your life once in a while. You know. But that was basically the mark of the end of a great golden era. So like after Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, you know, I guess Capcom got lazy, and we had Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, which was a huge letdown. They put it back to 2 versus 2 for some reason, no idea. And then they put like Infinity Stones, which was a meh. So basically, every character would, I think it was basically like assists that were all standardized. So it was kind of boring because like it really didn't add much to the gameplay, but it was a major part of it, which kind of doesn't make sense. And the roster was definitely kind of nerfed. I'm guessing because since Capcom had such huge success, a lot of IP holders, especially on Marvel side, wanted a bigger cut of the pie. You know, you guys are just all greedy, okay? If you've never given away your money or lost most of your net worth or given away most of your net worth, you are greedy, okay? And that's basically the whole industry, all industries. So I'm guessing that was most of the downfall. A lot of licensing issues, and that really killed the vibe, honestly, for Marvel vs. Capcom, in my opinion. Because we also had missing characters in the roster, and the graphics kind of went downhill too. So I'm guessing when Capcom had those issues, they didn't really put that much of a budget into Marvel's versus Capcom Infinite, and everybody was like, "Yeah, infinitely trash, infinitely downhill." There were quite some memes, and that game basically flopped, y'all. That game definitely went downhill, and I was sad. And it's crazy to think, but that game came out in 2017, and nobody talks about it already. So now we were at this lull period. No new Marvel vs. Capcom game for again like another 10 years, and ultimately the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 scene just died because everybody got bored, I guess. And there was already some other fighting games, like Guilty Gear coming in before Street Fighter. I guess Street Fighter 5, just kind of mad. Street Fighter 6, whatever fighting game was popular coming out. I guess a little bit of Grand Blue. Is it Grand Blue? Well, Blast Blue was definitely popular. Started becoming popular. What other fighting game? Oh yeah, Smash. Smash was the one taking over, honestly. Like Smash for Wii U. And Melee was definitely starting to get bigger too. So I guess a lot of people in the fighting game community had their focus shift on those games a little bit, while the fire of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 started dying. The golden age was coming to an end. And that golden age lasted about, I would say, a good 15 years, which is really amazing if you think about it. 15 years, you literally see people become adults during that scene time era, and it's crazy to think about now. So yeah, and then later on, after Infinite, not really much to talk about there. They started releasing like these arcade editions, a lot of throwbacks. But nothing really to revive the series at all, because the franchise's reputation became damaged after that. So, what do you think? Marvel vs. Capcom evolved like a lab experiment. It was a really chaotic mess of a game series, to be honest. And I guess when they tried to take it more seriously, it just didn't work out in their favor because of all the different kinds of characters and balancing issues with all those characters. Because honestly, 56 characters, all different, the different combinations of characters, my goodness, it is a lot. It is a lot. It literally took like additional 3 or 4 years for Marvel vs. Capcom 3 to even mature to a state where it was actually good to have professional tournaments with, which is crazy to think about it again. So Marvel did not become legendary because of game mechanics. They became legendary because it brought people and those mechanics together through the tournaments, and there were some really unforgettable experiences. Like I said, like my favorite player was F Champ. They had like Marlin Pie, I think. So many people, good people in that community. I mean, I just watched tournaments. Okay, I didn't participate because I just go to school, and I was really playing Mabinogi and other MMOs, whatever. So now we go into the third section. Obviously, the evolution of Marvel and Capcom itself really taking the scene in the fighting game community, and EVO, supposedly the biggest fighting game tournaments in the world. Okay, so Marvel is one of those fighting games where the crowd is part of the game, you know. A lot of people studied each other, they watched VODs and replays of each other. And during this time, I feel like Capcom was the golden ticket, you know, to the era of the transformation of fighting game. You know, if Capcom didn't exist, honestly, there would be no fighting game community era or state, whatever. And with the EVO coming in, things just changed a lot. And we met all kinds of people, right? From commentary, and a lot of people started streaming fighting games like on Justin TV or Twitch, and then later YouTube gaming as well, and Facebook gaming, I would say. It doesn't matter where you were streaming. And prominent stars started rising, you know, like Justin Wong, who's now, crazy thing about, a father and a husband. Amazing guy, amazing player. He was one of my favorites too, especially during his Evil Geniuses. So this is where we also see a lot of teams starting to pick up on the fighting game era. Shoot, like Evil Geniuses. I don't know, C9? No, C9. I really can't remember some of the popular teams, but there was a lot. I only remember Evil Geniuses because they were in so many other games that I watched, like StarCraft 2 and Call of Duty, I think, and Battlefield and Counter-Strike or something. Like, I don't know. So during this time, you know, if you didn't know who Justin Wong was, man, he was one hell of a player. His combos were crazy. He was really dominant in Marvel's Capcom 2. And yeah, he basically had that tournament clutch in him because he was part of a lot of iconic moments in Marvel's Capcom 2 and Marvel's Capcom 3. Oh yeah, and this is where we had our esteemed commentator Yipes. Super good player too. And it was just so crazy because his commentary really helped even beginners understand the gameplay. And every time he would commentate, it just literally made the game super exciting. And I really enjoyed that when I was watching tournaments on Twitch or whatever. And everybody was having a great time, you know. That was literally the golden era for Marvel's Capcom and it being added to EVO. And people were able to see the game on the big stage, watching these people compete and seeing the IP of the characters. Oh my god, obviously everybody was like thrilled. Like, oh my god, Spider-Man. Oh my god, I can use Iron Man. And all those other characters that you would see. So it was such a huge fighting game. And you were able to see so many different combos. Like, people made niche characters work out. Why can't I like even Ghost Rider, Dormammu, and so much more niche characters. And we always had that, like, it's Marvel time. That's where that meme comes from, which was really funny and great. And people were always saying like, oh, Marvel has such a unique lingo as well too. And yeah, everybody really enjoyed those memes and whatnot. I did too. It really was fun watching. And I did play, but not participate in any tournaments because I'm not that good. Other popular characters, I mean, players like Clockwork, and even from the Japanese side, there was really popular players too. I can't remember any names for some reason, just too much to remember. But there was one Japanese player that really knew how to use a Rocket Raccoon, and it was really fascinating because I think they found like a combo with his because he's a small character. they found something interesting with his hitbox. And then we have other people like, you know, Christy, F-Jam, KBR, Ray Ray, Combo Fight, Apology Man. So yeah, the hype was real, man. Marvel's Capcom 2, the 3, into Ultimate 3 was insane. Evil really grew, and it looked like there was no stopping it, you know? Marvel time was every day. So, you know, the tournaments evolved, you know. Definitely Capcom really attracted a lot of people into the fighting game community with Marvel's Capcom 2 and 3. So I don't know what else to talk about here because it was really just a golden era and the trajectory was super positive. So I'm gonna be like, what's your favorite tournament from Marvel's Capcom 2 or 3? And which was your favorite player? So now, why did Marvel vs. Capcom work this well? And why do people still talk about it as like one of the peak fighting games of, you know, fighting games series itself or genre? So basically, the team building was one of the main contributors. You know, you could build your team based upon your identity. You know, if you wanted to play more tanky, chunky characters, or more swift and assassin-like characters, or more combo-heavy characters, you can. Excuse me. So there's a wide variety, and basically, when you build your team, you know, just like in Dragon Ball Z, you basically make your identity in there, you know, your own play style that's very unique to you, until you realize that your play style sucks and you have to play some of the meta characters, and that's really where the downfall happened, in my opinion. But that just happens with everything, I guess. So yeah, your team is your personality. You will see interesting team comps like Magneto, Storm, and Sentinel, which was actually kind of the most common team comps. Add or take a Virgil or Dante, to be honest. And then they had like Cable, which was added in there for those in between combo breakers and combo starters. And then you had Morgan and Doom, you know, for that freaking spamming shit. Because it literally is just, you can just spam and there's so much damage. Then you had, of course, Virgil, Doom, and Strider for your quick combos, give or take the Doom. And you had those Phoenix players, alright? Like when you awaken Phoenix and you have X Factor, you can definitely make a huge comeback from a 1v3 with Phoenix, which is crazy. Like some people will literally just use their other two characters just as good to farm the meter, right? So they use Phoenix and then her awakening, you know, it's time to burn. And it's just crazy too with X Factor, because when you have X Factor activated, even if the enemy is guarding, you still do a nominal amount of damage, which was a huge game changer. But the downside was, you know, Phoenix could easily die in one combo. So yeah, it was a glass cannon type of playstyle, right? And then the second reason is, you know, the assists. It creates creativity, and especially with that big roster of over 50 characters, there's so much to be explored. Like I said, literally it would be 3 to the power 59, I think. So there's so many possibilities, and obviously it wouldn't take a few years to figure the best of the best. And I think once people did figure out the best of the best assists, that's where the game kind of started falling off. You know, like I said, the meta was really solidified. And Capcom, you know, was on the high. You know, and when you're on that high, do you really care anymore? I guess. You know, do you really care after the first billions of dollars? You know, you're already successful. Whatever. You know, it is what it is. And after that, movement is freedom. Every character had different types of movement, especially like Spider-Man. You can literally wall jump on the sides of the screen and all that amazing craziness. You had super jumps, you had mid-air dashes. Some characters can fly, some characters can teleport. You can even wave dash with some characters. I think Zero was able. So many amazing things, like air combos. It was so flashy and cool, right? And then, like I said, for the next reason, obviously the comeback mechanic, like with the X Factor. So people always had a chance, which was good because, like, even if you were playing the meta characters, you had that X Factor in your back pocket. But that was really I think it kind of kills the purpose, though, for some people when you get to this point of the game. Because then people will start finding ways to abuse the X Factor in their favor, like I said, especially with like Phoenix and I guess Sentinel in a way, because of the big hitbox, or like their moves hit more of the screen. So like you were never out until you use your X Factor, honestly. But if you use your X Factor early, you're basically gonna lose. And then the next reason is, the characters. Obviously the roster is huge, lots of diversity. Wolverine, Storm, Dante, all those crazy characters added to the game. And the last reason, it was visually appealing in my opinion. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 had a style that was basically comic kind of looking and 3D, very explosive, very loud, very wild, very vibrant. It literally you just open the title, and it was just like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, boom, and its music was sick. It was just an amazing game. It gave off that badass vibe, like that cool vibe, compared to other games. Okay, and it just looked fun. That was one of the selling points. The game looks fun. You could definitely put in a lot of memes. Like was Deadpool in the game? I feel like Deadpool was in the game, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it was just a great game. So basically, with all those reasons combined, it definitely took the game into different heights, especially within the fighting game series itself. And then you begin to see like other companies trying to copy the success of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like with I guess 2KXO, like the recent League of Legends inspired fighting game. I really don't know that many, to be honest. Not Rivals of either. That's more like Smash Brothers. Yeah, but there's similar series. Maybe Skullgirls, which was an indie game, fighting game, and just a lot of indie games in general. Kind of drew inspiration from Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Now it's gonna bring us to I believe our final section. Tokon Souls, Marvel Tokon. It's honestly, in my opinion, a step back in the series. So now they're not focusing on the characters and the acquisition of IP of characters, and going back to what actually made the game good. Because if Tokon succeeds, we might see the resurgence of Marvel versus Capcom, or some other, like Marvel versus the universe, or Capcom versus the universe, or something. Like they'll just have all these characters from so many different IP if this one becomes successful. So Marvel vs. Tokon is the next upcoming title. I believe it actually officially releases in either next month, or it's definitely this year. So I'm definitely gonna watch those games, and I hope to see some of my favorite players play the game. maybe some older players will come back. Who knows? I don't know. Feels like a lot of people have moved on after Marvel vs. Capcom 3 to different fighting games like Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8 and I guess Guilty Gear. So with Marvel Tokon, it's not a Marvel vs. Capcom anymore. It's strictly in the Marvel universe, which is kind of sad, but it is what it is. You know, people want to make money, and if they're not making money when you're making money. You know, the food is off the table. You know, the food is off the table. But this time in Marvel Tokon, it is a 4v4, which I think is kind of obsessive. Which is nice, I guess, but I feel like the matches are just going to be too long, and yeah, I don't know about that. Personally, I think 3v3 was perfect. It's good enough. So here, what the added developer is Arc System, which I believe also does work for Guilty Gear and BlazBlue. So it's definitely going to have a lot of new features that weren't in Marvel vs. Capcom. Maybe some borrowed features like the burst feature, reversals, and literally the different amount of like grab arts and all that stuff, okay, from like the other fighting game series. And Arc System Works is probably the most logical chosen developer for Capcom. Because they just have a really fine-grained history, okay? They really know how to make fighting games. And I think what they did with Guilty Gear, is it Guilty Gear? I'm pretty sure it's Guilty Gear. Like, the balancing is very well done. So it's going to be interesting, you know, to see Arc Systems take the helm for Marvel Tokon. You know, they might have like the Guilty Gear visual style with a Dragon Ball Z kind of fighting aspect, and then the anime cutscenes when you do your critical art or special or whatever super. Very strong character expressions, so the designs pop out more. Super cinematic fighting sequences, visual impacts, you know, as you can see from Guilty Gear, which is amazing. And then the team fighter experience, you know, their take on it. So Tokon is not really taking the style of like the 3v3 from Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and they're doing 4x4 is because they want it to feel different, but more like an improvement in terms of creativity. You know, so then people can still have their base core team and then have basically the counters. So I'm guessing most players will have their core team, and then the fourth character will also be the counter pick in their team. I think that's literally how it's going to end up playing, because once you watch a lot of fighting games, then you begin to understand the basic foundations and mechanics of what players prioritize in their team. You begin to understand what sets players apart, and it's usually the team composition, all right? Okay, I'm going to talk this one really quick because I'm actually really tired. And I haven't been exercising that much because I've been busy playing Power World. We're not exercising much, doing the video series this week. And because I just beat Power World like this today. So hopefully I can upload some content for Power World. Anyways, so now there's more team identity, more assist potential. Even though the roster looks bigger, I feel like it's not that big, or it's like more of the same. Because of the less characters with IP struggles. In the official article for the game, most of the players only need to master one, which most people will probably put as their anchor. And it's very important for traditional fighting games, right? To master your character. And in Tokon, we already have some confirmed characters like Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America, Doctor Doom. So they're like just some of these meta characters from Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is in Tokon, so it might not affect a lot of the player base. But man, it's just a big blow not having to see other characters that were previously in the game which kind of sucks. Hopefully they put new characters from their own IP, and Capcom should just include characters from their other games. Like, I mean, I don't know about Monster Hunter, but Capcom has a wide range of indie titles, less known popular series that they can probably put into there to just boost their, their catalog of games. As for the stages and the modes, Tokon comes with really amazing looking stages, all right? They really put dynamic into the environment. Freaking crazy, amazed. Like, that's all I gotta say. Compared to Infinite, and even though the flashy background scenes of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and 3, holy crap, the visual upgrade is insane. But can Tokon surpass Marvel vs. Capcom series? This is honestly the last chance for Capcom and this fighting game series as a whole. Even though they have Street Fighter 6 to fall back on, I feel like this is it. This one is either gonna be popular, or it's done. All right, in my opinion, even from a business standpoint, from a franchise standpoint, they have to get this right, or that's it. Fighting games for this series is dead. They really have to focus on the movement. Can't feel clunky and like shitty. Characters movement have to make sense. The assists shouldn't be spammy. I mean, you're gonna have 3 assists during the game. That's a lot. You can imagine how cheap, or not cheap, how abusing that gameplay will be. That's why I think 3 is perfect, because the cooldowns between just 2 assists, you at least have 5 seconds, but with 3 assists, it becomes like 3 seconds, which, like, I don't know if you'll be able to do anything. Definitely expanding the combo system. Hopefully they make some ways to end combos, because some combos, like I said, can become infinite. And if you actually know the game really well, that's a very abusable. They might add like the burst or combo breaker or something. Hopefully the gameplay is going to be fast and refined. The obviously strong netcode. Everybody likes to play online these days. They don't want to be playing against a lag switcher or a lagger, whatever. And maybe Capcom will have some support for Tokon in the tournament scene. We might see it first at small local tournaments, then regionals, nationals, and then like the big Evo screen. All right. So yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom. Marvel Tokon doesn't need to replace Marvel vs. Capcom. It just needs to remind the fans or people that really like fighting games that Tokon or the Marvel, I don't even know, it's a little different series, honestly. It's still there, and if it becomes successful, maybe we'll get a true successor, because I don't think Marvel Tokon is a true successor to Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. All right, like I said, if it's like Capcom versus the universe or Capcom versus something or whatever, that would be a true successor with having different characters and IP from different kinds of series, companies, and publishers, right? So lastly, if it can create that hype, its own tech, its own tournament scene, moments with new players, sadly, and some old players becoming commentators and tournament organizers, it'll be a great time, I think. People should definitely freaking put money into this. It'll be fun. So my last questions will be like, are you excited for Marvel Tokon? Do you think it's going to be a hit or miss? Obviously, do you think Arc Systems, as a lead developer, is going to revive, I guess, the spin-off IP of Marvel vs. Capcom? Do you actually want a future after Tokon? A true successor, like Marvel vs. Capcom 4, not Infinite and all that, a true successor. And most importantly, do you think that they'll add more characters, or maybe there will be a DLC? Who knows? Or what character would you like to see in future fighting games? I mean, recently a lot of fighting game series have been doing crossover DLC, okay? Especially Street Fighter 6. So maybe we'll see the same treatment with Marvel Tokon. Yeah, I mean, it would be crazy if there was a Marvel Tokon X, 2KXOX, Guilty Gear, or any KOF Tekken 8 crossover, right? Okay, that's it for this Walk and Talk series. I'm gonna just try to upload a shit ton of Power World videos and shorts. I'm just discouraged because it takes me so long to literally nothing's happening in my gameplay. It's so boring. But that's not the main reason why I upload these videos or make these videos, as much as I enjoy playing video games all the time, because it's just fun. All right, I'll see you in the next Walk and Talk Rock series. Have a great day.